This is the last in the series, The Sweetness of God, and it's called Now That You've Tasted. We've been talking for weeks about the sweetness of God in the heat of summer. But once we've tasted that sweetness, then what? When we taste a fruity drink that we love, we share the recipe, right? My daughter-in-law recently told me about a drink of frozen watermelon muddled with fresh mint and lime, and it made my mouth water, and I tried it. It was amazing. I've heard most of my life the call to taste and see that the Lord is good, but I've not really read the verses that surround that one call. It's found in 1 Peter 2, and there's this call to come and do some things now that we've tasted and seen that the Lord is good and sweet. In other words, once we've tasted the goodness and sweetness of God, there's a response we have to give after we've tasted. And it involves getting rid of things like hatred, deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. After all, it says it's time to grow up. Later in this chapter, we're reminded that we've all received mercy. Maybe that's the sweetest gift of all from His hand because it calls us into relationship with Him apart from sin that separates us from Him. Mercy and forgiveness, both sweet and life-changing, once we taste and see that He is good. And once we've tasted His mercy, we're called to offer that mercy to others. Sweet tasting requires sweet sharing. We're to do good and silence ignorant talk. We're to show respect and fear God. We're to abstain from sinful desires, and we're to live such good lives among those that haven't yet tasted that they might see our good deeds and glorify God, not us. We're also called to bear up under unjust suffering. And in verse 20 it says, if we suffer for good and endure it, that's commendable. In other words, He's healed our wounds, forgiven our sins, prepared shade and a table of fruit for our enjoyment, so that we might then live and follow His example in our relationships with others. Tasting and seeing the goodness of the Lord and the sweetness of the Lord is awesome, but there's something required after the taste, and it's a change that comes from the sweetness that we've just tasted. Changing our attitudes for good is growing up in our faith, and it does not do any good to taste and see the Lord is good and sweet if we're foul and stinky in our relationships with others. We train our kids to eat fruit and include sweet fruit in their lunches and on their plates. We know the importance of natural sweetness from fruit instead of added sweetness from artificial sugars. And when fruit is consumed in its natural state, well, all kinds of goodness happens to our bodies and our skin. We often think that tasting His goodness means having our prayers answered and lots of money in the bank, healthy body, charming children. Those things are nice to have, but they're not the sweetness that we're to taste, the kind that changes us and provides growth. Remember the list of the fruits of the Spirit? They include so much more, and they include an inward change toward outward stresses. When we're pressed all around, we're to endure and love our oppressors. When our prayers are not answered in a timely manner, we're to continue in the faith. And when money is gone or resources are low, we're to give thanks in everything. When our bodies fail us, we're to maintain long-suffering, to carry on, because He will take care of us. And when our children try us, we're to keep a gentle spirit and love them despite all of the trials. That's the product of tasting and seeing that the Lord is good and His fruit is sweet, and it's called growth. It's what we want in our children, and it's what He wants from His children. Sitting under the shade tree of a fruit tree fills our mouths with the fruit, like we said, that's fallen on the ground. And it might be tasty and a reprieve from the sun, but the track around the lake is still waiting for us to continue running. There are folks on the track that will pass us, and we will pass them, and they too will get hot and need a drink of cool water and a taste of sweet fruit. And we know we will show them that the shade tree where we sat and were offered sweet fruit is the same shade tree for them, or else we have learned nothing at all. We all know what dining on artificial sweets all the time without exercise or nutrition looks like: lazy, overweight, and self-indulging. None of us wants that for our children, and neither does He. He invites us to His table, spread and piled high with the goodness from His hand. But that goodness and that sweetness must be extended to those who have never tasted, else they too will fall from the scorching sun in the heat of the day. Taste and see that the Lord is good and sweet, but then grow up and change to be the good in the world.